Welcome to Slash Bash, where today I am bringing you another Entitled Parents Reddit video. In our first story, I told you there was one rule. Let's jump right in. To preface, I would like to apologize for the length of this tale, but in my humble opinion, it's worth the read. Trigger warning, in the course of this story, I went to the restroom in my backyard. I had what I felt was good reason to, and precisely no one would have seen me doing so if they weren't an entitled twerp. This story begins with myself and my dog in the backyard, to which we'd been banished because the inside of my house was being painted. Dogs and wet paint are a thing that do not mix well at all, and bath time for my pupper is akin to all-out war. I would say the nuclear option, but that's reserved for when he must don the cone of shame. While we were outside killing time waiting for the house to be dog-safe again, I discovered I very much had to go to the bathroom, and since my backyard is pretty well secluded and only visible really from above or by someone who's way up into my yard, I decided to go then and there. After the sigh of satisfaction and before the stream had finished, I heard a very high-pitched whining sound, and when I looked up to see what the sound was, I saw a quad-rotor drone floating above my backyard, presumably watching me. I don't really have a shy bladder, so I finished what I was doing, put myself away, and went back to my regularly scheduled dog entertainment programming. Later that day after dinner, there was a knock on my door, and upon opening it, I saw a very uncomfortable-looking police officer. He asked if I could step outside to speak with him, and I did so. He then asked me if I'd urinated in my yard recently, and when I raised an eyebrow and sort of looked at him like, seriously? He clarified that someone had called in and reported me for doing so, and the report has to be investigated since I live so close to a school. Close as the crow flies, there's a patch of swamp between my house and the school that is not easily navigable. With a car, it's closer to a mile to actually get there. I confirmed that I had and showed the officer where I'd done so, and then told him that the only people that had seen me were my dog and someone flying a drone over my backyard, and I was reasonably sure my dog hadn't phoned the police on me. The officer thanked me for my explanation and said I was very likely not in trouble, but he would take it as a favor if I just used the toilet for the time being. The next day, my dog was in the dog run by himself, sun-worshipping, while I was working. I had the door open in case he started barking at neighbors or what have you. Suddenly, he lets loose his fiercest war cry and starts making distress noises. I look outside to see what's going on, and there's a quad rotor buzzing around my dog run, tormenting my poor dog. I do what anyone should do in that situation and grab my hose, set the nozzle to anti-aircraft, high-pressure jet for the uninitiated, and zap the drone with the hose. The drone ceases operation and falls to the ground in my dog run. It had been chewed on a little bit before I reclaimed the thing, but it seemed fine. I took my dog and the drone inside and figured I'd hear from someone sooner or later. About an hour later, my doorbell rings and there's a 12 or 13-year-old kid on my steps with a bike helmet on and his bike thrown into my garden. I ask if I can help him and he demands I return his drone. I ask him why I should when all he's done with it, in my experience, is harass me. He starts foot stomping and throwing a shrieking tantrum that my cousin, who is 7, had grown out of throwing many moons ago, demanding I give the drone back now. He actually concluded with, "And that's final." I found that frankly adorable and started laughing. I told him to come back with a parent if he wanted the drone back, because he's not capable of acting like a grown-up for this conversation, and went back into my house. The kid actually tried and failed to destroy some of my garden before picking his bike back up and going home. Around 6 that evening, there's another knock at the door, and the kid's back with a man who's a little bit older than I am. I think he knew his kid was full of it because he sheepishly asked me if I'd robbed his son and stolen his drone. I smirked a little bit at this and told him exactly what his son had done with that drone and how it happened to come into my possession. His face couldn't decide between chagrin and fury, and he turns and asks his son if this is really what happened. His son just starts bawling because he knows he's caught, and the dad says, "When I bought you that drone, I said there was one rule. You don't bother people with the drone." The dad apologizes on his son's behalf and says, "I can keep it." The kid emits a squawk of indignation and fury and says, "I'm telling mom." There's a bit of a scuffle between them while the dad wrangles the kid back into the vehicle they arrived in, and then the dad comes back and gives me his cell number with instructions to text him if his ex-wife should darken my doorstep. I said I would and waved goodbye, mostly to needle the kid because the twerp had it coming. A few days later, around lunchtime, I heard an ominous bang sound, followed shortly after by pounding on my front door. Not knocking, pounding. As I got closer to the door, I could hear high-pitched shrieking, and I connected some dots. Before opening the door, I found the drone dad contact in my phone and texted, "I think she's here." Then I opened my door and was greeted with the sight of an extremely irate, slightly younger than usual Karen. When the woman sees me, she starts screaming at me for stealing from her precious boy and how I am just the worst human being to grace the face of the earth in her estimation. She's got quite the head of steam worked up, and I can see almost immediately that I'm not allowed to talk, so I decide to pour gasoline on this fire and send a follow-up text. "I can see why you got a divorce." Right when I hit send, this woman slaps the phone out of my hand and onto the ground and demands I look at her while she's talking to me. I go for a non sequitur and say, "At me." This startles the Karen long enough for me to clarify, "Talking at me. This isn't a conversation." It's worth noting that it was about 12:30 p.m. and this woman had Merlot breath so strong I felt like I was getting a buzz just being yelled at by her. She lets out a squawk and starts to puff up like a blowfish, readying another verbal salvo when I hold up a finger, stoop to grab my phone, and then speed dial the police non-emergency line on my phone, because it's pretty obvious how this is going to go. When she demands to know who I'm calling, I tell her calmly that I'm calling the police. Her response was, and this is a direct quote, "Flipping good. Let's see how the pigs deal with a mosquito-dicked weasel like you who steals from children." The operator actually heard that and blessed this woman's heart. She actually said, "I think I understand the nature of your call. Can you give me the address where this is happening?" I did, and the operator thanked me and said a response was on the way. While I was talking to the operator, I got a reply from the dad, "Oh God, tell me she's not drunk." Deciding I didn't need my phone slapped out of my hand again, I just sent a thumbs down reply to the text and settled in to get yelled at incoherently until backup arrived. It wasn't all that long in coming, maybe 5 minutes total before the boys in blue showed up. It wasn't until they pulled up that I noticed this woman had missed my driveway and actually winged my mailbox pulling up onto my lawn. The police separate us, and I actually wind up talking to the cop who urged me to use the toilet like a civilized human being. I tell my side of the story, and then the officer I was talking to goes to assist the other officer who was trying to figure out what Karen was going on about because she's getting steadily more belligerent and violent. She winds up slapping one cop and trying to bite the other before she's restrained and bundled into the back of one of the cruisers. At this point, the dad is pulled up and looks completely aghast, but he does confirm my side of the story with the police. The officers thank me and the dad for our time and promise a tow truck is coming for the woman's vehicle, and they pull their heads together and do police things. And the dad leaves to go and do whatever it was he was doing before Karen reared her ugly head. I did get the last laugh though. While the police were filling out forms or whatever it is police do after a horror show like this, I zipped into my house and grabbed the slightly chewed and no longer damp drone. Making sure Karen was watching, I sauntered over to my trash cans and tipped the piece of junk in and dusted my hands off before walking back inside. I'd already confirmed the drone was dead from getting hosed. I was going to throw it out either way. This just made me happy. This is John from /bash. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed the video and want to be the first to know when the next one drops, then subscribe and make sure you click on the notifications bell so that YouTube will show you my videos. We'd love for you to drop a like, share it with your friends, and we will see you in the next one.